Okay, let's start with a thought. What if the very tools we're using to fight for justice, well, what if they're actually hindering true liberation in some ways? Like, what if focusing purely on identity risks dividing us instead of, uniting us against the big systemic problems?
That's a powerful question to kick things off.
It really sets the stage for today's deep dive into Asad Haider's book, Mistaken Identity: Race and Class in the Age of Trump. It's quite a challenging read.
Absolutely. And to help us explore it, we're actually using a unique approach for this analysis, drawing insights from a two-voice AI conversation powered by Google's NotebookLM.
Right, aiming for a really dynamic and hopefully deeper understanding of the book's arguments.
And just quickly, for even more reflection on topics like this, using AI for analysis, you can check out Mindful Moments over on our YouTube channel. It's all about inspiring rational thought.
Good plug. Okay, so Mistaken Identity, published 2018, Verso Books. It definitely made some waves, didn't it? Political nonfiction, coming right after the 2016 U.S. election.
It really did.
Yeah.
And Haider's core argument is, well, it's pretty central and provocative. He argues that contemporary identity politics, as it's commonly practiced in the U.S., has sort of drifted.
Drifted from its radical roots.
Exactly. He contends it's moved away from its original, more liberatory aims. And this is the key part. He thinks this shift might actually be neutralizing anti-racist movements.
Neutralizing, that's a strong word. So if that's his critique, what's the alternative he's pushing for?
Well, he argues that real liberation, genuine change, requires moving beyond just identity-based recognition.
Yeah.
It needs a commitment to solidarity, to collective struggle against the big structures. He specifically calls out capitalism and racism.
So it's a callback to a different kind of politics.
In many ways, yes. You have to remember the context, right?
Yeah.
Post-2016 election, a lot of fragmentation on the left, the rise of right-wing populism, but also certain forms of liberal identity politics becoming very prominent. And Haider's drawing heavily on the legacy of the Black freedom struggle, pulling from those really intense theoretical debates in the 60s and 70s.
So boiling it down for you listening, Haider's making a clear distinction. He separates identity politics as he defines it from what he sees as authentic anti-racism.
Right. He critiques what he calls neoliberal multiculturalism, the idea of celebrating diversity without challenging underlying power structures.
And the end goal for him is universal emancipation. His big worry is that identity politics, as currently practiced, tends to fragment movements, make them less political, less threatening to the status quo.
Precisely. It kind of depoliticizes them, in his view.
Okay, but let's back up a bit. Who is Asad Haider? Why should we pay attention to his specific take on this?
Good question. Well, he's a political theorist, he's an activist, and a founding editor of Viewpoint magazine. He holds a PhD in the history of consciousness.
So academic credentials, but also activist experience.
Exactly. His scholarship is known for trying to bridge that gap between radical theory and on-the-ground activism. And his personal background, son of Pakistani immigrants, his own experiences as an activist, they definitely inform his perspective.
Which brings us back to the timing. Why this book right then? What was the urgency he felt?
He really saw it as a moment of crisis. The way identity politics was becoming dominant, he perceived it as contributing to the failure of movements to build, broad, effective coalitions.
So a direct response to that feeling of fragmentation.
Yes. He's basically sounding an alarm, urging people to find ways to overcome that division.
Let's dig into that definition he uses. You said he defines identity politics as distinct from anti-racism. How does he phrase it?
He states it very directly. He says, quote, "I define the politics of identity as the neutralization of movements against racial oppression."
Wow. Okay, neutralization. What does he mean by that, practically speaking?
Well, instead of movements aiming for really fundamental systemic change, like, say, dismantling specific economic structures or challenging state power, he argues they sometimes end up just seeking recognition or inclusion within the existing systems.
So fighting for a seat at the table rather than trying to rebuild the house, so to speak.
That's a good way to put it. For Haider, that shift from demanding systemic overhaul to seeking individual or group affirmation, that's what strips the movement of its truly radical potential, its revolutionary power.
And he backs this up with examples.
Yeah, he uses systematic logic. He looks at historical case studies. He talks about groups like the Combahee River Collective pointing to their original intent.
Right, who famously talked about interlocking systems of oppression.
Exactly. And he draws parallels, sometimes implicitly, to show how he sees this shift, this co-option or neutralization, playing out even in more contemporary struggles.
Okay, so that's the critique. What about the positive vision? You mentioned solidarity.
Right, that's his positive theory. The absolute imperative, as he sees it, is to move from that focus on individual or group recognition to a politics of solidarity.
Rooted in collective struggle.
Rooted in collective struggle against structural oppression. He's very clear. It's not enough to just critique. You have to offer a path forward.
And how does he build that case? Is it purely theoretical?
Not at all. This is where the book gets quite powerful, I think. He uses personal anecdotes, talks about feelings of alienation, the search for connection, for solidarity. It adds this real emotional weight.
So connecting the political argument to lived experience.
Yes, and he weaves in stories from historical struggles, contemporary ones too, trying to inspire empathy, a sense of urgency. It reads in parts like a real call to arms for collective action. You feel that energy.
But it's not just emotional appeal, right? There's intellectual backing.
Oh, absolutely. He grounds it firmly in Black revolutionary thought, radical traditions. He engages directly with other thinkers, even critics, within the Black radical tradition.
Showing he's aware of the nuances and debates within those traditions.
Precisely. He acknowledges the complexities, but he keeps coming back to his central point, the need for solidarity, the dangers of fragmentation. That's the through line.
Okay, it sounds like a really forceful argument. But no book is without its criticisms, I suppose. What are some of the common critiques leveled against mistaken identity?
Well, one common point is about his definition of identity politics itself. Some argue it's maybe too narrow or even a bit of a straw man.
That it doesn't fully capture the way many people understand or practice it.
Right. Or that maybe he risks oversimplifying the real complexities of intersectionality, how different forms of oppression overlap, and the importance of lived experience in shaping political consciousness.
That's a fair point. The balance between a sharp critique and capturing all the nuance is tricky.
It really is. But, even with those critiques, if you look at the bigger picture, his call for universal emancipation, for building broad collective action, that still resonates very strongly with a lot of people.
People looking for alternatives to what feels like very fragmented politics right now.
Exactly. So the book, it remains a really vital resource, I think, for understanding the potential limitations he identifies in certain approaches to identity politics, and crucially, for thinking about how to move beyond them. It's still fueling debates among activists, among scholars.
It certainly gives you a lot to think about. Which leads us to maybe a final thought for you listening. In our, very sincere pursuit of justice, are we sometimes mistaking individual or group recognition for genuine collective power? What if the path to real liberation lies not just in affirming who we are, but more in what we choose to build together?
That's a powerful question to leave people with. And for more reflections like that, digging deeper, using different tools, you can explore mindful moments on our YouTube channel.
And check out our podcasts for more analysis, too.
Definitely.
If you found this discussion valuable, please do subscribe. Share it with someone else who enjoys thinking critically about these issues.
Yeah, spread the word.
And you can find a link to purchase Mistaken Identity right in the description if you want to dive into Haider's arguments yourself. Keep thinking critically, everyone, and keep seeking that deeper understanding.